framework where we ensure that our policy positions and program initiatives really reflect and capture the experiences of people living with HIV and hepatitis C in Canada. Our agenda for today is as follows. I'll begin with a bit about the Common Drug Review and provide a review on market access, followed by an introduction to Dolutegravir, and then go into some of the key findings in the Dolutegravir clinical trials. And after that, everybody will have the opportunity to engage in discussion or ask any questions that may arise. So the first thing that I would like to discuss is one of the biggest reasons why we're here today, and that is the Common Drug Review and review on market access. And I really want to go over this process briefly just to ensure that everybody is aware of how drugs actually get approved in Canada. So in Canada, drug approvals happen in 3 steps. And the first step is at Health Canada, so the regulatory approval stage. And here Health Canada reviews new drug submission data to determine a drug's safety and efficacy. And at this stage, if the results are deemed favorable and the drug achieves the condition that it's intended to treat, then the drug is issued a notice of compliance, giving the manufacturer the approval for the sale of this drug in Canada. And then the second step of drug approval occurs at the provincial level. So all provinces, with the exception of Quebec, who uses its own assessment system, participate in this process. The drugs are committed to the Common Drug Review, which is a part of CTAC, the Canadian Agency for Drugs and Technologies in Health. So Health Canada's and drug safety and efficacy data are assessed to determine the cost effectiveness of new treatments for public health plans. And because most people access HIV medications through publicly available assistance plans, this step is particularly important in determining the accessibility of medications in Canada. And then we go here to the third and final step, where the Common Drug Review's recommendations are sent to all 4 provincial formularies, again with the exception of Quebec. So the following slide here represents the roles that various stakeholders, such as Health Canada, industry regulators, play from drug development phase all the way to drug dissemination. And the green circles that you could see along the diagram represent CTAC's involvement in informing market access in Canada. So one of the things that CTAC really does throughout is engage with regulators and industry to ensure that the needs of people living with HIV and hepatitis C are reflected in this entire process. And you can see at the point of drug submission over here, and this is what we're really hoping to achieve today, is that CTAC works to ensure the inclusion of people living with HIV and hepatitis C are represented in the patient input process. So following decisions made by the Common Drug Review, CTAC's involvement is also advocating for the inclusion of new medications on public formularies. And then as we move along the circle, CTAC is continuously involved in disseminating information and facilitating knowledge exchange and translation on treatments and treatment access. And then lastly, once we move up here, treatment information based on experiences and the needs of people who are living with HIV and hepatitis C are also disseminated and shared with industry partners in order to improve new and upcoming treatments. So in Canada, we have 19 public formularies. So formularies exist for each province, and as well we have 6 federal drug plans. And in order to improve health outcomes for people who are living with HIV and hepatitis C, CTAC's goal is really to ensure that drugs with clinical improvement are made publicly available on all formularies to improve treatment access. So the Common Drug Review process and its recommendations for drugs on public formularies really informed by the cost effectiveness of a drug, and it does so by looking at its relation to questions of safety and efficacy. So essentially, the drug's clinical improvement is weighed against the cost of the drug. And also, a fundamental component here in the common drug review criteria is patient input, which again here is one of CTAC's central roles, and that's to steward patient input for those caring for and people living with HIV and hepatitis C. So how does the common drug review process work? Prior to receiving a notice of compliance, drug manufacturers are able to submit clinical trial data to the common drug review. If the new medication treats a life-threatening or serious condition and or significantly reduces the cost of drugs, the common drug review can grant priority review for a new medication. And in this case, Dolutegravir has been approved by the FDA, so we could expect that Health Canada approval will follow shortly. Possible recommendations. When the CDR provides its recommendations based on the criteria that we discussed earlier, there are 4 possible listings that could occur. The first recommendation is that the common drug review could put forward is to list the drug on public formularies without any restrictions. And this is really only done if it's established that a medication is determined to be safe, efficacious, and that it will significantly reduce drug expenditures. And it's really important to note that this is very rare for the common drug review to recommend full and unrestricted listing. Probably more common is the second recommendation, to list with criteria. And these criteria could be both clinical, cost-related, or both. And even if a drug is deemed as efficacious and safe and offers clinical improvement, the common drug review could recommend that a new medication is not to be listed at its current price, and this would really require manufacturers to go back and resubmit a new price, or for provinces to negotiate a lower price with manufacturers. And finally, the fourth medication is do not list. So here it could be the case where a new medication offers really little or no therapeutic benefit over existing current medication. Now we're going to get into Dolutegravir. So Dolutegravir is the only once daily unboosted integrase inhibitor used for the treatment of HIV in adults and children. It comes in a 50 milligram oral tablet form, and its suggested dose is 50 milligrams once daily for adults who haven't taken treatment before, and twice daily for those who've experienced previous resistance to integrase inhibitors. And Dolutegravir also has no significant food effects. Now looking at this chart over here, one of the advantages of Dolutegravir is that drug-to-drug interactions are minimal, and this is very important for patients to manage any adverse reactions, and especially with an aging population and for those who are experiencing comorbidities. And when we look at this graph, we see no dose adjustments except in the case of where Dolutegravir is supposed to be administered with etravirine 200 milligrams twice daily, and this is prohibited. And this is mainly because it affects plasma concentrations in Dolutegravir, making it less effective. And if we look down here, Dolutegravir also should be taken 2 hours prior or 6 hours after any antacid, calcium, iron supplements. This is mainly because these products bind with Dolutegravir. But overall, there are very few drug interactions, certainly less than what we've seen in other antiretroviral treatments. So now I'm going to begin to get into some of the clinical trial data. And before I begin, I just wanted to disclose that the information I received today were um, from clinical trial results that were presented at various conferences, including the IAS conference on HIV pathogenesis treatment and prevention, and the 19th International AIDS Conference. And for those of you who are interested in seeing the entire presentation slides, please email me, or you could go on natab.org, where they really do a great job in posting a lot of the material from these conferences. So what we can see is that dolutegravir has the most extensive clinical trial data at the time of Health Canada approval. So 5 trials were conducted on diverse populations, including patients who were treatment naive, treatment experienced, and treatment resistant. And I just wanted to say that here at CTAC, we are particularly impressed and supportive of such an extensive trial design that really considers so many factors. And we could really see this in this particular graph that shows the percentage of male and female participants in all 5 studies. And in the saline study particularly, we see a greater inclusion of female participants at 32%, which is very important, especially with regards to capturing any statistically significant differences that may exist in sexes with regard to how drugs are absorbed and metabolized in the body. At the same time, we could also see the inclusion of hepatitis B and hepatitis C co-infected participants, which is especially important in determining the efficacy and safety potential of the use of a drug for those who are experiencing viral hepatitis. And the inclusion of co-infected people is particularly important, especially since roughly 30% of people living with HIV are also co-infected with viral hepatitis. So it's crucial to know from the get-go if the medication is going to work in co-infected populations. So now over the next couple of slides, I'm going to go over some of the study designs. So I just want you all to bear with me. I just really wanted everyone to understand the context in which these trials took place. First trial is the single trial, which consisted of 788 treatment-naive patients. So patients were randomized to either once-daily dolutegravir combined with Convexa or a tripla once-daily treatment. And the purpose of the study was to test the non-inferior activity of dolutegravir against the tripla. So really the point of this study was to ask, how does dolutegravir measure up to quote-unquote the gold standard treatment, efavirenz? The Spring 2 trial consisted of 830 HIV treatment-naive subjects, and the purpose of this study was also to test the non-inferiority of dolutegravir against raltegravir. Subjects were randomized either to the dolutegravir once-daily arm or raltegravir 400 milligrams twice-daily arm. And both the dolutegravir and raltegravir arm were studied with either Convexa or Truvada as the backbone. And the drug choice of whether selecting Convexa or Truvada was subject to the investigator's discretion. And from the clinical trial data, 40% of investigators selected Convexa, while 60% chose Truvada. So now that we've compared dolutegravir to raltegravir for people who haven't taken treatment before, the saline trial consisted of 725 HIV integrase inhibitor naive but antiretroviral experienced patients. And really the study was designed to test the safety and efficacy of dolutegravir 400 milligrams once daily, 50 milligrams once daily versus raltegravir 400 milligrams twice daily when used with a backbone of 2 retrovirals, and one which must have been fully active, and a minimum of 2 class drug resistance. And in the trials, approximately 50% of participants had resistance to 3 or more drug classes. The Viking study was conducted in 183 integrase experienced patients who currently or previously had experienced treatment failure on integrase inhibitors. The trial was particularly important for patients who